so for number 1, it says Frank wants to eliminate the variable y from the system below. So which step would enable him to eliminate y through adding? So first it says we could multiply each term in the bottom equation by 3. So if I multiplied everything here by 3, and I rewrite that equation, I would get 6x plus 6y is equal to 18. And if I rewrite the top equation, 7x minus 6y is equal to 8. And I try to add straight down, my y terms would indeed eliminate. So choice 1 would allow Frank to eliminate y. Question 2. Using substitution, Kent solves the following system algebraically. Which equivalent equation could Ken use? First thing you want to notice here is that every single choice is being represented as plugging into the bottom equation. Every choice is 3x plus 2y equals negative 3, with some substitution either into y for choices 1 and 2, or substituting in for x in choices 3 and 4. So the first thing you want to do here is take the top equation and solve for both x and for y and see which one is correctly substituted. So if I go and solve for y, I would subtract the 2x, and if I divide by negative 1, I get y is equal to 2x minus 5. So if they correctly substituted for y, there should be a 2x minus 5 being multiplied by that positive 2. I look at choice 1, it's 2x plus 5, that's not correct. Choice 2 has 5 minus 2x, that's not correct. So now I'm going to need to take that top equation and solve for x. So 2x minus y is equal to 5. If I add over the y, I get 2x is equal to y plus 5. And if I divide by 2, I get x is equal to 1/2 y plus 5 over 2. So now I'm looking to see if they correctly substituted 1/2 y plus 5/2 in for x, which would mean it would be multiplied by 3. So choice 3 has that 1/2 y plus 5/2. Choice 4 does not. So choice 3 would be the correct way to use the substitution method to solve using Ken's choices. Okay, question 3 tells us that during the season, a football player earns M. His earnings M were $0.005 million more than those of his teammates. And his teammates' earnings are going to be represented by F. The two players earned a total of $3.95 million. Which system correctly shows this their earnings? So the first thing that we were told is that M. McGee's earnings were $0.005 million more than Fitzpatrick's, which is F. So M were, which is just another way of, the past tense of saying is, so that would be our equal sign, 0.0005 more than, sorry, one extra 0 there, 0.005 more than is addition. F is Fitzpatrick's earnings. So that's our first equation. Then they say the two players earned a total of $3.95 million together. So that would mean M plus F is 3.95. So choice 4 has these two equations. However, just notice they took the first equation and they just switched the terms on either side of the equal sign, which is still an equivalent equation. Okay, for question 4, we're asked how many solutions does this system have? So I want to solve this by elimination, so I'm going to start by bringing over that negative 4x term to the other side to get them into the right form. So I have 2x plus 5y is equal to 7, and add over the 4x to get 4x plus 10y is equal to 14. If I want to try and eliminate and solve and find some solutions here, I'm going to take my top equation and multiply it by negative 2. So I get negative 4x minus 10y is equal to negative 14. That comes from multiplying each of these terms by negative 2. I'm going to rewrite the bottom equation without changing it. And when I add straight down, every term cancels, and I get that 0 is equal to 0, which will always be true. So there are infinitely many solutions to this system. So these lines would be the same lines. They would be graphed one on top of the other. Question 5. When solved graphically, which system would have exactly 1 point of intersection? So the thing you wanted to notice about question 5 is that if you look at these choices, choice 2, these two lines have the same slope but different y-intercepts, meaning they're parallel. Parallel lines will never intersect. They will go off in the same slope with different y-intercepts, giving us no solution. 3/5 is the same as 0.6. So even though choice 3, you might not have seen that they were the same slope right away, if you had converted either the decimal to a fraction or the fraction to a decimal, you would see that they are also parallel lines. And choice 4, both have a slope of -1, so they're also parallel lines. The only choice here that would have an intersection point is choice 1, because these two lines have different slopes and different y-intercepts, meaning they will intersect at some point. Question 6, what is the solution to the system that is graphed below? So I'm just going to go to this point. I'm over at -1 on the x-axis, down at -2 on the y-axis, so this would be choice 3, -1, -2. For 4, I'm told the phone company charges $49.99 per month, and then an additional fee for every text message sent. The cost T for text message is given by this equation. What would the value of 0.1 best represent? So this is my slope. They just told me that T is my text messages sent, so 0.1 is being multiplied by the amount of text messages. So this would represent the amount of money charged for every individual text message. Okay, for question 8, we're asked to solve for x in terms of the others. This is a literal equation. So because we have a fraction here, what I'm going to do is rewrite this and write 4t/1 so that I can cross multiply. So I'm going to get 4t times x is equal to 3y plus 2z times 1, which is just 3y plus 2z. I want to solve for x, so now the only thing left to do is to divide away that 4t, which is multiplying x, so we need to divide to undo that operation. And I'm left with 3y plus 2z divided by 4t, which is choice 3. Question 9, which graph represents this equation? Okay, so the first thing I want to do if I'm looking at a graph is to rewrite this in mx plus b form. So I'm going to start by subtracting the 2.5x. So I get 5y is equal to -2.5x minus 30, divide by 5, and I get y is equal to -0.5 or -1/2x minus 6. So once I see a negative slope, I can get rid of choices 2 and choice 3 because they are both positive slopes. I also should notice here that there is a negative y-intercept, so choice 1 is also completely gone because this graph intercepts the y-axis in the positive y, whereas this graph, which is my answer, intersects in the negative y. And I know the graph, it's a little small, but you can also see that every y interval is going up by 2 because they labeled this as 4, this is 8. So if I went down and looked at this y-intercept, that's down there at -6. Question 10. Which of these sets of numbers contains only one rational number? Choice 1. Pi is an irrational number, but I'm looking for a choice that has one rational. 1/2 is rational, and so is -13. So there are two rational numbers here. I'm looking for one with just one. Number 2. The square root of 2/4. Even though this is a fraction, the square root of 2 is not a perfect square, so this is an irrational number. The square root of 99. If we weren't sure about this one, we could go to our calculator. You'll see here that the square root of 99 does give me something irrational. It's a decimal that does not end, and it has no pattern. And the other number here, so now we have 2 irrational. So as long as this is rational, this would be my answer. And I see a decimal here that does indeed terminate. Terminating decimals are rational numbers. And again, just to look back and see why the other choices are not correct, -6 is rational. The square root of 225 with a negative in front would still be a perfect square. And 4 7/8 is also rational. All of those are rational. Square root of 21, not a perfect square for 21, so this would indeed be irrational. 0.75, another terminating decimal, that's rational, and 0 is rational. So the reason that these choices were incorrect is because we were looking for the choice with 2 irrational numbers and only 1 rational. So the only choice there was 2. Okay, question 11, we're being asked to solve this inequality. So we have constants on both sides, x's on both sides. So I'm going to start by subtracting 7. So I get negative 2/3 x is less than x minus, I'm subtracting 7 from a negative 8, so that's going to give me negative 15. And I'm going to subtract this 1x to the other side. Negative 2/3 minus 1, type that into your calculator, you should get negative 5/3. X is less than negative 15. Now the only thing connected to x is this negative 5/3, so I'm going to multiply by negative 3/5. It's reciprocal to get x alone. I am multiplying by a negative to solve this inequality, so my symbol has to switch directions. I'm also going to multiply negative 15 by negative 3/5. Negative 15 times negative 3/5 is going to give me a positive 9. So x is greater than 9, choice 1. Question 12, which set of points does not represent a function? The definition of a function tells me that every x has to have its own unique y. So choice 1, we have negative 3, negative 1, 0, 1. None of the x repeats, so that would be a function. Choice 2, negative 2, 0, 3, and 4. No repeating x's, so that would be a function. Choice 3, 2, 1, 2. Okay, so for 2 being associated with negative 2 and also associated with 5 tells me this is not a function. And again, if we looked at the last choice, every x is not repeating, so that would be a function. The accompanying figure shows this graph, x equals 5. What is the slope here? Okay, well, we've talked about vertical lines or x equals lines, and if you look at a vertical line, that little trick we taught you was that there is no slope, or sometimes we call it undefined slope, for a vertical line. Another way you could check this would be to pick 2 points. So I know the point 5, 0 is on the line, and I could also go up and say maybe 5, 1. If I went to find change in y over change in x, I'm going to get 0 minus 1 over 5 minus 5. If I type this into my calculator, I'm going to get an error, divide by 0 error. I am not allowed to ever divide by 0. It is undefined if 0 is in the denominator of my fraction. Okay, for the open-ended, the first question is saying that the student is selling tickets to a play. An adult ticket costs $6.50. A student ticket costs $4. Alex is selling X adult tickets and 12 student tickets. Write a function to represent how much Alex has collected from selling tickets. All you had to do for this question was write the function. You didn't have to solve for anything. So they're telling me that an adult ticket costs $6.50, and they sold X adult tickets. So 6.50 times X would tell me how much money I earned from adult tickets. They also sold student tickets. They sold them for $4, and they sold 12 of them. This would be enough to get 2 points on this question. If you did go ahead and simplify, because you can actually multiply the 4 and the 12, you also would have gotten full credit if you wrote 6.5 or 6.50x plus 48. But either of these was acceptable. You just had to write it out in function notation. 415, it gives us a function, f of x is equal to x squared minus 2x plus 3, and would like us to evaluate f of negative 2. Remember, what's inside the function is x. What the function is equal to is y. So if I'm plugging in a negative 2, that means everywhere I see x, I should be plugging in a negative 2. A way to do this on the calculator, which I would recommend, would be to go into your calculator and store negative 2 for x. So negative 2, store x, hit enter, and now I'm just going to type that in. X squared minus 2x plus 3, hit enter, and we get 11. The other way to do it would be to use parentheses. Negative 2 squared minus 2 times negative 2. Notice how I'm using parentheses. because you always need to put your input in parentheses when evaluating. So no matter how you did that, whether storing or plugging in, you should get 11. Question 16, solve for x algebraically. So I have a negative 3 here that's in front of this parenthesis, so I'm going to start by distributing that negative 3 to give me negative 12x plus 24 is equal to 6x plus 12 minus 9x. Excuse me. Then I'm going to combine some like terms. I have some on either side of my equation. So 7x minus 12x is going to give me negative 5x plus 24. 6x minus 9x is negative 3x. I'm going to bring the x's over to one side. Negative 2x plus 24 is equal to 12. Subtract the 24. And I get negative 2x is equal to negative 12. Divide by negative 2. And I get x is equal to positive 6. Again, it's an equation. You can always take your value for x, plug it back into the original, and make sure it makes both sides equal. Question 17. It tells us that Guy and Jim work at a furniture store. Guy is paid $185 a week plus 3% of his total sales in dollars, which can be represented by this function. So I didn't have to worry about writing the function. They told me g of x is equal to 185 plus 0.03x. Jim also has a function that represents his earnings of $275 per week plus 2.5% of his sales. They want us to determine the value for x that would make their weekly pay the same. So if g of x and f of x represent their weekly pay, to know when they would be the same means I need to know when they would be equal. So if I take my two equations representing their sales and set them equal to each other, all I need to do here is solve for x. So I'm going to start by subtracting the 275. And I get negative 90 plus 0.03x is equal to 0.025x. I'm going to subtract that 0.03x. I get negative 90 is equal to negative 0.005x. Divide by that negative 0.005. And you should get 18,000 for x. So that tells us that both Guy and Jim, as long as they earn $18,000, they will be making the same weekly pay.
Okay, so for question 18, they said Stu and Kathy were doing algebra homework. They were x, write the equation on a line that goes through these 2 points, and they wrote 2 different equations. We want to justify why they're both correct. So if we look at these, our equations look different, but we have to see if one is equal to the other because they're telling you that both of them are correct. So we use justify, which means just your math, to show that these both are correct. So if I take Sue's equation, y minus 4 equals negative 1/3 x plus 3. If I take this and I take this negative 1/3 and I distribute it half, this side didn't change, so I have y minus 4 equals negative 1/3 x, and then minus 1. Negative times a positive is a negative. So if we look at this, we still don't have that to be the same. So we do have this negative 4 still on our left side, so I can add 4 to both sides to get that y by itself, to get it into our y equals mx plus b form. And when I add that over, I do get that my y equals negative 1/3 x plus 3. And if I look, this equation is the same exact as that equation, so just having this equation is justifying that they are both correct. Number 19, they're telling us an electronic store spends $4.25 per package of batteries and $5.75 per USB drive. Debbie noticed that the store spent this much money on purchasing both the batteries and the USB drives last month. Later, Debbie found a record showing that there were a total of 375 items purchased. That consisted of both the batteries and the USB drives last month. Create a system of equations to represent the possible packages of batteries and USB drives that were purchased. So they're telling us we need a system of equations, which means we need two different equations in order to solve this. And then they want us to determine how many USB drives. So first they're telling us that store spends $4.25 per batteries and $5.75 per USB drives. So the first thing we need to do, since they tell us that batteries are B and USB drives are U, we don't need a let statement. So I know that $4.25 is how much my batteries are, and $5.75 is how much my USB drives were. And they're telling us that the total that they spent on purchasing both of these items was $1,931.25. So if I take the $4.25 times however many batteries and the $5.75 times however many USB drives, I'm going to get a total of $1,931.25. So that's my first equation. The second equation, they're telling me that there was a total of 375 items that were being purchased. Well, we have to ask ourselves, what items are we buying? Well, we're buying batteries and USB drives. So if we take the number of batteries that were being purchased and add the number of USB drives, altogether they told us there's a total of 375 items. So there are a few different ways that we can solve this. Since this second equation is kind of simpler, I can easily get it in either B equals or U equals. I'm going to use substitution. You could also use the elimination method. So I am going to subtract U on both sides, and I get B equals 375 minus U. Now, I'm going to take this equation now, and wherever I see B in this equation, I'm going to replace it with the 375 minus U. So my new equation is going to be 425. Instead of B, I'm going to do this 3. Sorry, there should be. Oh, that's 375 minus U plus 5.75 U equals that same total. Okay, so if we want to solve this, we now need to take this 425 and distribute this to both numbers. So we get 1593.75 minus that 4.25U plus 5.75U. Big. Let me see if I can switch this over. And that equals that same 1931.2. From here, I now need to look and combine my like terms. So I have two terms with a U in it. So that is going to give me this same 1593.75 plus 1.5U equals that 1931.25. Now I need to solve. In order to solve, I need to subtract this from both sides. Same thing from this side. And what I have 1.5U, because these cancel out, and that's going to equal 375. And divide by 1.5 to get that U by itself. And I get U equals 220. Now, I just did all this work. Let me look back and see what my question asked me. They want to determine how many USB drives. If I look back through this, U was how many USB drives, so my answer is 225. For this question, we did not need to go and plug in and find the value of B. If you did find the value of B and then get the value of U, you would have gotten that B is 150. And then you could plug that in to get your number of USB drives at 225. Number 20 has, Albert says that two systems of equations shown have the same solutions. So our first solution, first system is here. We have two equations, and then we have another system here. And Albert's saying that these two have the same exact solution. So the same exact x, y coordinate plane. We want to determine and state whether you agree with Albert, and then justify. Remember, justify, when we see that, we need to show just the math. So I'm going to start with solving my first system. And if I look at this system, all of my x's are in line, all of my y's are in line, my equal signs are in line, and my constants are in line. So I am going to think that I'm going to use elimination here. So let me start with rewriting. Actually, I can look at these questions. In order to eliminate, I need to get one variable to cancel out. So if I look at this, I can multiply my top equation by 12. And I can multiply my bottom equation. If I multiply just by an 8, those are not going to cancel out. I'm just going to have a 96 and a 96, both positive. So I need to make one of them negative, so those 96s will cancel out. So when I distribute this out in my first one, I end up with a positive 96 x plus 108y equals 576. We want to make sure that we distribute to all three terms that are inside those parentheses. Our second equation, when we distribute this again to all three terms, we're going to get a negative 96x minus 40y equals a negative 160. Again, please be very careful when we're distributing with this negative. Make sure you stay consistent and watch your signs. Now, we want to add these. Our x's eliminate, and if we add our y's, we have 68y equals 408. Divide by 68 on both sides, and I get that y is 6. Now, I'm solving a system of equations, so not only do I need my y, I need to find my x variable. So you can say either equation and for y, I'm going to plug in x. So 8x plus 9 times 6 equals 48. I now just want to go and solve for 8x plus 54 equals 48. I'm going to subtract 54 from both sides. So when we subtract this, we get a negative 6 divided by 8, and we get our x value. It is negative 0.75, or if you had negative 3 over 4, that is also correct. So the solution to this first system was negative 3 over 4, comma, 6. That was our first solution to that system. Now, they also had another system here that they wanted you to find the solution. So let's take a look at that. So if I want to solve this other system, if I look at my two systems, the second one here looks like it's going to be very easy to solve for y. So that's going to be my first step that I'm going to use for this. So I have negative 8.5y equals negative 51. And I see on here I can divide both of them by negative 8.5 divided by negative 8.5. And I will get my y value of 6. So if I look, I do have the same y value so far, but I do need to continue and make sure that I have the same x value. So I need to take that value of 6 and plug it into the other equation. So this equation actually is the same exact equation, but we just want to double check, so let's go and solve it. 8x plus 54 equals 48. And subtract that 54, subtract that 54. I get that 8x is negative 6. And divide put the two together, this answer is -3 over 4, 6. If I look at both of these solutions, they are the same exact solution. So we recall they ask us to determine and state whether we agree with him. So at the end here, you need to actually say, yes, I agree with Albert. Now, it did also say justify. So justify again means just your math. So showing the solution of both of these equations and saying that you agree with him should be your final answer. So for the last question, we have a word problem. It says someone's getting married. We would like to hire a professional who will come to our house and do hair and makeup for the bridal party. She's narrowed it down to 2 possible choices. So I should get my pen ready to highlight some things so I know what is important. So a woman from Oak Grove Salon charges an initial fee of $50 and an additional $10 per hour. A team from Beauty by Anita offers a free consultation and then charges a higher hourly fee of $20. So this is Beauty by Anita, and she charges $20. They want us to create a system of equations to model the situation and then use the coordinate grid to determine and state after how many hours she will pay the same amount, not mattering what company that we go with. Okay, so if I look for Oak Grove, my function they're telling me is going to be a fee of $50 and an additional $10 per hour. So this fee of $50 is going to be a one-time fee. When we're writing a linear equation, it's usually in the form of y equals mx plus b, and that one-time fee is that b. An additional $10 per hour, that is our slope, because that's going to change as per every hour. So our slope is represented by this m. So if I wanted to write it as an equation, I could write that as y equals, it's $10 per hour, so that's going to be 10x plus a $50 fee. So that is our first equation. And our second one, they're telling me Beauty by Anita. And she has a free consultation, and then hourly is $20. So if I put that $20 is my slope, that's how it's changing every time, so that equation is going to be 20x. So now we need to graph both of these. So Oak Grove is starting at $50 an hour. So initial fee, of $50. So we see that our x-intercept is hours and my y is my amount fee. Since they labeled these, we do not need to actually write a let's say. They're telling us what our x and y is represented. So Oak Grove Salon is starting at $50. So we can start a point at $50. And then that was our y-intercept. So that's why we're starting there on the y-axis. And then it's $10 for every hour. So if we look at how our grid is, each box is representing an hour. So if I go 1 hour, it should be $50. So, sorry, $10. So 1 hour, I'm going to go up $10. Another hour, I'm going to go up another $10. So each hour that I go, I'm going to go up $10. Finally, we want to take a line and just connect it. And we want to do a label just so we know what's going on, that this is our Oak Grove Salon. Our second one, Anita, we did not have a y-intercept here because she didn't charge an initial fee. Her consultation was free. So we are going to start at the origin of 0, 0. And she's charging $20 an hour. So each time we go over an hour, we need to make sure we're going up $20. 1 hour, $20, 1 hour, $20. And lastly, just make sure you get a know what we're talking about. So those are our two functions graphed, and if we look, they want to know how many hours will she, after how many hours will she pay a safe amount. So after how many hours, that's our x-axis. If we look at 5 hours, which is right here, if we go up, we can see that that is actually where they intersect. So in 5 hours, they will pay that same amount of $100. So somewhere on here, you have to say after 5 hours, she will pay the same amount. Now there is a follow-up question to this. So they say if it takes 4 hours to complete the bridal party's hair and makeup, which salon should she choose? Explain your answer. There's a few different ways you can do that. If you look at your graph, after 4 hours, so after 4 hours, if I look, Beauty by Anita is $80 and Oak Grove is $90. So would you rather pay $80 or would you rather pay $90? I would rather pay less, so that would be $80. But if you want to show that mathematically, Oak Grove Salon, I'm just going to abbreviate, we have that $10 times 4 hours plus that $50 initial fee, that's going to be $90. And our Beauty by Anita is going to be that $20 times 4 hours, and there's no official fee. So that is going to be $80. So somewhere on here, you just need to see which one that you would choose. So I would choose, or she should choose, Beauty by Anita. Because her cost would only be $80. So it would be $10 less, actually. So always just make sure you go back and make sure you answer all the questions. The first part wanted us to say after how many hours will the pay be the same, so we want to look where the graph intersected. That was after 5 hours. That was our first part of the question. And the second part of our question wanted to know if it was 4 hours, which one should we choose? So we substituted in for X, that's 4 hours, and we saw that Beauty by Anita was cheaper. So that's who she should choose.